Most gardeners look at a shady yard and feel defeated. They lay down bark mulch, plant a few ferns, and walk away. The shady yard becomes the forgotten yard. Here is what nobody tells you. That corner is not a problem. It is an opportunity. And the gardeners who figured that out have been eating better than their neighbors for centuries. Today, we are looking at 20 crops that thrive in exactly that spot, ranked from surprising to genuinely jaw-dropping. Number 10 produces more food per square foot in shade than in full sun. One of these is growing in your garden right now, disguised as an ornamental, and you have been walking past it for years. And the one at number 1? Ancient civilizations built themselves around it. You drink it every morning, subscribe, and hit the bell. This list was built for the corner of your garden you stopped believing in. Number 20, ramps, wild garlic, the forest floor, delicacy that chefs pay a fortune for. Here is a crop that high-end restaurants charge premium prices for every spring. It grows wild in shaded woodland. Most gardeners walk past it without a second glance. Ramps, also known as wild garlic or Allium tricoccum, have been eaten across North America and Europe for thousands of years. Indigenous communities across the Appalachian region harvested them every spring as one of the first fresh foods available after winter. European folk tradition used wild garlic medicinally and as a seasonal green long before any cultivated garlic existed. In shade, ramps spread slowly but permanently, forming dense colonies beneath deciduous trees that return every spring without replanting. They ask for nothing beyond leaf litter, moisture, and the dappled light of a woodland floor. The flavor is a milder, brighter version of cultivated garlic, with a fresh green quality that disappears entirely once dried or processed. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because it cannot be rushed. Ramps reward patience over several seasons before reaching full production. Think of it as a crop that turns your shaded tree roots into a restaurant-quality harvest every spring. Patience is not a gardening weakness. It is the whole strategy. Number 19, alpine strawberry, the woodland berry, that fruits for 6 months. Without full sun, most gardeners assume strawberries need full sun to produce. Alpine strawberries never got that message. Fragaria vesca has been growing across the shaded woodland floors and forest edges of Europe and Asia for thousands of years. Medieval monastery gardens cultivated it along shaded pathways and beneath orchard trees. French cuisine elevated it as fraises des bois, the wild forest strawberry, prized for an intensity of flavor the modern supermarket berry cannot approach. It was never a sun crop. It was always a shade crop. In partial shade, alpine strawberries fruit continuously from late spring until the first hard frost, not in a single flush like cultivated varieties. Continuously, every week. The reduced sun keeps the plants cool, prevents bolting, and extends the harvest window far beyond anything a sunny bed produces. The berries are small, but the flavor is concentrated in ways that commercial varieties never achieve. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because the commercial strawberry industry selected for size, uniformity, and shelf life. Alpine strawberries offer none of those things. They offer flavor and continuous production instead. Think of it as a strawberry that chose the forest over the field and never regretted it. The best things are rarely the biggest ones. Number 18, Japanese ginger, Myoga, the shade crop that Japanese gardeners have been growing for centuries. Most Western gardeners have never heard of this plant. That's about to change. Myoga, Zingiber myoga, is a close relative of culinary ginger native to the shaded forest floors of Japan and China. It has been cultivated in Japanese kitchen gardens for over 2,000 years, grown deliberately in the deepest shade available because shade is not a compromise for Myoga. It is a requirement. The edible parts are the flower buds and young shoots that emerge from the base of the plant in late summer and autumn. The flavor is delicate, floral, and mildly gingery, unlike anything else in a Western kitchen garden. In Japanese cuisine, it appears as a garnish for tofu, noodles, and grilled fish, and as a pickling ingredient that has been used in traditional preservation for centuries. It spreads slowly by underground rhizomes, forming a permanent, low-maintenance colony in the shadiest corner of the garden. No replanting, no annual effort. It simply returns and produces year after year. It disappeared from Western gardening guides because it entered the English-speaking world through Japanese restaurant culture rather than horticultural tradition. Think of it as a crop that the shadiest corner of your garden was specifically designed to grow. Some of the most extraordinary flavors in the world are hiding in the places we least expect to look. Number 17. Ostrich fern fiddleheads, the ancient forest vegetable that foragers have always known about. Most gardeners plant ferns for decoration. A small number of gardeners eat them. The ones who eat them never go back to ignoring them. Ostrich fern, Mateuccia struthiopteris, produces edible fiddleheads in early spring, the tightly coiled young fronds that emerge from the ground before unfurling into full leaves. Indigenous peoples across North America and foraging communities across Russia, Japan, and Korea have harvested fiddleheads as a spring vegetable for thousands of years. They were one of the first fresh foods available after winter in forest communities that depended on what the woodland floor produced. The flavor is distinct, somewhere between asparagus and green beans, with an earthy woodland quality that no cultivated vegetable replicates. They are cooked briefly and eaten as a seasonal delicacy that arrives once a year and disappears within weeks. The first time I cooked fiddleheads from my own yard, I understood why foragers guard the locations of wild stands like secrets. In a shady yard, ostrich fern establishes quickly, spreads reliably by underground runners, and produces a permanent, self-managing colony that requires zero maintenance beyond the annual harvest. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because fiddleheads have no commercial supply chain. You cannot buy them in most supermarkets. You grow them or you go without. Think of it as a vegetable that the forest has been offering for thousands of years to anyone willing to look down in spring. The most seasonal things are almost always the most worth waiting for. Number 16. Mitsuba, Japanese parsley, the shade-loving herb that 3-star restaurants cannot get enough of. Chefs pay premium prices for this herb every single week. It grows effortlessly in the shadiest corner of any garden, and most gardeners walk straight past it. Mitsuba Cryptotaenia japonica has been cultivated in Japan and China for over 2,000 years. It grows naturally in the cool, moist shade of forest understories, appearing in Japanese culinary texts as a standard kitchen herb used in soups, hot pots, and rice dishes. It has never been a sun crop. It was always a shade crop grown in the darkest available corner of the kitchen garden. The flavor combines parsley, celery, and mild anise into something entirely its own. The leaves, stems, and roots are all edible. In shade, the growth is lush, tender, and continuous. In direct sun, the plant bolts immediately, and the flavor turns bitter and sharp. It spreads reliably by self-seeding once established, filling a shaded bed year after year without any replanting effort from the gardener. It disappeared from Western gardening guides because it arrived through Japanese restaurant culture rather than mainstream seed catalogs. Think of it as the herb that professional kitchens pay premium prices for, growing for free in the corner of your garden you gave up on. The most valuable things in a garden are rarely the most obvious ones. Number 15. Turkish rocket, the perennial salad green that grows in shade and never needs replanting. Most salad greens last one season. This one lasts a lifetime. Turkish rocket, Bunaeus orientalis, grows wild across the shaded roadsides, woodland edges, and disturbed ground of Eastern Europe, Turkey, and Central Asia. Folk communities across Russia and Ukraine harvested it from field edges as a spring green for generations. It appears in traditional Eastern European food culture as a peppery, mustard-flavored salad herb that emerges reliably every spring from the same root without any action from the gardener. In shade, the young leaves are mild and pleasant, with a flavor similar to arugula, but more complex and less aggressive. As the season progresses, the flavor sharpens. The flower buds can be harvested and eaten like broccoli before they open. A single established plant provides multiple harvests across the season from the same permanent root system. It tolerates poor soil, partial shade, and complete neglect with equal indifference. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because it was never fully domesticated. No commercial variety exists. No seed company sells it prominently. You find it, establish it, and harvest it indefinitely. Think of it as a salad green that decided annual death was beneath it and kept growing anyway. The most resilient things in a garden rarely ask for recognition. They just keep showing up. Number 14. Groundnut, Apios americana, the forgotten protein, crop that saved the pilgrims and loves your shady yard. Here's a crop with a history most gardeners have never been told. Apios americana, the American groundnut, is a native North American vine with a 2,000-year record of cultivation by indigenous peoples across eastern North America. The Wampanoag, the Lenape, and the Cherokee all cultivated and consumed its starchy tubers as a primary food source. When the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth and faced starvation, it was Apios americana, growing in the shaded woodland edges, that kept them alive through the first winter. It grows as a twining vine through shaded shrubs and woodland edges, producing strings of small starchy tubers underground that taste like a richer, nuttier version of a potato. The tubers contain 3 times the protein of potatoes. The plant fixes atmospheric nitrogen, improving every soil it grows in. In a shady yard, it climbs through existing shrubs and fences, producing food underground while taking up almost no deliberate growing space above it. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because the potato arrived and the agricultural system abandoned everything it replaced. Think of it as the crop that saved a civilization, and then watch that civilization forget it existed. The most important things are not always the ones that get remembered. Number 13, Sweet Cicely, the anise-flavored perennial that medieval kitchens could not cook without put a leaf of this plant in your mouth, and you will taste clean, pure anise sweetness. No bitterness, no sharpness. Just something that medieval cooks considered as essential as salt, and that almost no modern gardener has ever grown. Sweet Cicely, Myrrhis odorata, has been cultivated in the shaded herb gardens of Europe for centuries. Medieval monastery kitchens used it as a sweetener, adding the crushed leaves to tart fruits to reduce the amount of sugar required. It appears in herbals from the 16th century onward as a standard kitchen herb grown in sheltered, partially shaded beds. Nicholas Culpeper documented it as a warming, comforting plant, good for the elderly and those with weak digestion. The flavor is unmistakably anise, sweet and clean, present in the leaves, stems, seeds, and roots. Every part is edible. The leaves can be added raw to salads or cooked into sauces. The green seeds are eaten as a sweet snack directly from the plant. The roots are cooked like parsnips. It thrives in partial to full shade, returning every year from a deep taproot without any replanting. It is one of the earliest plants to emerge in spring, and one of the last to die back in autumn. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because the sugar industry made dedicated sweetener herbs commercially irrelevant. Think of it as a natural sweetener that grows in your shadiest bed and comes back every year without being asked. The simplest solutions are often the ones we replaced with something more complicated. Number 12, landcress, the watercress substitute that grows in shade without any water feature. Most gardeners want to grow watercress, but assume they need a stream or a pond to do it. They do not. Landcress, Barbaria verna, is watercress adapted to soil. It developed independently as a cultivated plant with an almost identical flavor and nutritional profile, but without any requirement for moving water. It was common in British kitchen gardens through the 17 and 1800s as a winter and early spring salad green, valued specifically because it produced fresh leaves in cold weather when almost nothing else was available. It germinates in cold soil. It grows in shade. It tolerates frost. It provides fresh leaf harvests in November and March, when the shaded garden is otherwise completely empty. The flavor mirrors watercress precisely, sharp, peppery, and clean. The nutritional profile is equally strong, high in vitamins C and K, calcium, and iron, with the same glucosinolate compounds associated with cancer protective effects in epidemiological studies. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because the supermarket solved the seasonal fresh leaf problem commercially, and nobody told home gardeners the solution already existed in their own grandparents' gardens. Think of it as watercress that moved inland, adapted to shade, and kept producing through winter while everything else gave up. The most practical solutions are often the ones closest to hand that nobody thought to mention. If this list is changing how you see your shady yard, subscribe now and hit the bell. We are into the top 10. And the crops from here become genuinely extraordinary. Number 11, Society garlic, the ornamental that has been feeding people in plain sight for decades. Most gardeners grow this plant as a decorative border plant and never once think to eat it. Society garlic, Tulbagia violacea, is native to southern Africa, where indigenous communities used every part of the plant as a food and medicine for generations. It produces strap-like leaves that taste of mild garlic throughout the year, edible flowers used as garnish, and bulbs used in cooking exactly like cultivated garlic. In its native South Africa, it was used medicinally for respiratory infections and as a daily food flavoring long before it was exported to the rest of the world as an ornamental. In shade, it grows as a permanent, low-maintenance clump that expands slowly each year without any replanting. The leaves are available for harvest every single day of the growing season. No bolting, no dying back in heat, no seasonal gap in production. It produces more continuous harvestable leaf material per square foot in a shady border than almost any other edible plant available to a home gardener. It disappeared from food gardening guides because it arrived through the ornamental trade and was filed away as decorative. Nobody told the food gardeners it was edible. Think of it as a garlic plant that hid in the flower border for decades while everyone walked past without tasting it. The most useful things in a garden are sometimes the ones we never thought to question. Number 10. Egyptian walking onion. The perennial onion that plants itself and produces 3 harvests a season. Here is the crop that produces more food per square foot in shade than in full sun, and most gardeners have never planted one. Egyptian walking onion, Allium proliferum, does not require planting every year. Left alone, the weight of its topsets pulls the stalks to the ground, roots where they fall, and the colony expands outward season by season without any intervention from the gardener. A perpetual supply of onion from a single original planting that never needs repeating. In shade, the growth is slower, but the production is consistent. Green onion tops in early spring before almost anything else in the shaded garden is awake. Then bulblets in summer. Then overwintered bulbs in autumn. 3 distinct harvests from one planting in one season. Folk tradition across Central Asia and the Middle East maintained walking onions in kitchen gardens for centuries, precisely because they required nothing and produced continuously. The plant traveled trade routes, not because merchants chose to carry it, but because communities recognized immediately that it worked. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because the seed industry sells annual. A plant that multiplies itself and never needs repurchasing is a poor commercial product. Think of it as an onion that took the concept of low maintenance and made it permanent. Some plants do not need managing, they just need space and permission to get on with it. Number 9. Sorrel, French variety, the lemon-flavored perennial that produces in the deepest shade. All season, most gardeners think of sorrel as a herb. French kitchen gardens always knew it was a vegetable. French sorrel, Rumex scutatus, has been a staple of French country cooking for centuries. It appears in regional recipes from Burgundy, Brittany, and the Loire Valley as a primary ingredient in soups, sauces, and egg dishes, rather than as a garnish or seasoning. Folk tradition across Eastern Europe used it as a spring tonic green, eaten raw and cooked in the first weeks after winter. It grows naturally in partially shaded meadow edges and woodland borders across Europe and Asia. In deep shade, it is essentially indestructible, a perennial that returns every spring without replanting, spreads slowly into a productive clump, and provides continuous leaf harvests from early spring through late autumn. The flavor is bright and lemony from oxalic acid, adding a freshness to cooked dishes that no cultivated vegetable quite replicates. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because its perennial nature meant seed companies had nothing to sell after the first planting. Think of it as a lemon that learned to grow leaves and decided shade was the perfect place to do it. The things that ask the least from us are often the ones that give back the most consistently. Number 8. Miner's lettuce, Claytonia. The Gold Rush survival. Green that grows in winter shade. Without any help here is a crop with a name that tells its entire history in 2 words. Miner's lettuce, Claytonia perfoliata, earned its name during the California Gold Rush when prospectors ate it raw to prevent scurvy during winter months when no other fresh food was available. Indigenous communities across Western North America had been eating it for centuries before any prospector arrived. It grows wild in the cool, moist, shaded areas beneath trees and along north-facing slopes, producing lush, succulent growth through the coldest months of the year when almost every other edible plant has disappeared entirely. The flavor is mild, fresh, and slightly succulent. The entire plant is edible. Leaves, stems, and small white flower. It requires no preparation beyond rinsing and produces continuously through winter and early spring in shaded conditions that defeat every other salad green. It self-seeds prolifically. Plant it once in a shaded bed, and it returns every winter without any effort from the gardener. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because its peak season is winter, and the gardening industry is built entirely around summer production. Think of it as the winter salad that grows itself in your shadiest bed while the rest of the garden sleeps. The gaps in the growing season are never as empty as we assume. We just need the right plant to fill them. Number 7. Sweet woodruff, the medieval flavoring herb that turns deep shade into a fragrant food garden. Most gardeners treat deep shade as a dead zone. Sweet woodruff treats it as prime real estate. Galium odoratum has been carpeting the floors of European deciduous woodlands for centuries. Medieval monastery gardens planted it deliberately beneath trees and along shaded walkways as both a ground cover and a culinary herb. German folk tradition steeped it in wine every spring to make Mai Bowl, a traditional May Day drink still made today. It was food, medicine, and fragrance growing from the same shaded corner simultaneously. It spreads rapidly in deep shade, forming a delicate whorled leaf carpet that grass could never produce in those conditions. In late spring, it covers itself in tiny white star-shaped flowers. The fragrance intensifies when the leaves are dried. Fresh-cut hay and vanilla combined into something unlike anything else in the garden. The dried leaves flavor desserts, drinks, and infusions. The fresh plant makes one of the most distinctive herbal preparations in the European culinary tradition. It disappeared from mainstream gardening guides because its primary use as a flavoring herb requires drying and preparation that the modern convenience food culture never accommodated. Think of it as a herb that fills your deepest shade with fragrance and flavor and asks for absolutely nothing in return. The most generous things in a garden are almost always the ones growing in the corners we forgot to tend. Noot King Henry, the medieval spinach that fed peasant families for centuries and disappeared overnight. Most people have never heard this name. 600 years ago, almost every kitchen garden in northern Europe had a patch of it. Good King Henry, Chenopodium bonus henricus, was a staple vegetable of medieval and early modern Europe. It grew in cottage gardens from England to Poland, planted in the partially shaded edges of growing plots where the soil stayed moist and the light was gentle. Young leaves were cooked like spinach. Young shoots were eaten like asparagus in spring. Flower spikes were boiled like broccoli. One plant, 3 distinct vegetables across a single season. It is a perennial. Once established, it returns every year from the same root without any replanting. It tolerates poor soil, deep shade, and the root competition beneath large trees that defeats almost every other vegetable. It was precisely the plant you grew in the difficult spots because the difficult spots were the only spaces left in a small cottage plot. It disappeared from kitchen gardens in the 18th and 19th centuries as spinach and asparagus became widely available and affordable. The multi-purpose shade perennial was replaced by dedicated single-purpose crops that needed better conditions. That trade was convenient. It was not an improvement. Think of it as 3 vegetables in one plant, growing in the hardest corner of your garden, asking for nothing, and producing across the entire season. The most useful things are sometimes the ones that stopped being fashionable before anyone noticed they were gone. Number 5. Hosta, the edible shade perennial that every Western gardener grows and nobody eats. Here is a plant already growing in millions of shady gardens across the Western world. Almost none of those gardeners know it is food. I grew hostas for 10 years before I learned I could eat them. That single fact changed how I look at every ornamental in my garden. Hosta has been eaten in Japan and Korea for centuries. The young shoots that emerge in early spring, called urui in Japanese, are considered a seasonal delicacy, harvested before the leaves unfurl and cooked briefly as a vegetable, with a mild, slightly sweet flavor and a tender texture similar to asparagus. They appear in Japanese spring, cooking as sansai, mountain vegetables gathered from woodland gardens, and shaded hillsides as one of the first fresh foods of the season. In a shady Western garden, hosta is almost universally treated as an ornamental. The same plant, the same shoots, the same harvest window, simply never communicated to the gardener who planted it. The young shoots emerge reliably every spring from the same permanent root, requiring no replanting, no maintenance, and no effort beyond harvesting them at the right moment before they open fully. It disappeared from Western food gardening guides because it entered the English-speaking world entirely through the ornamental horticultural trade, and its food tradition was never translated alongside the plant. Think of it as the vegetable that has been growing in your shady border all along, waiting for you to look at it differently. Sometimes the most significant discovery in a garden is not something new. It is something you already have. Number 4, skirret, the forgotten root vegetable that medieval Europeans grew in shade for centuries. Most gardeners have never heard of this plant. Every gardener who grows it asks the same question afterward: why did nobody tell me about this sooner? Skirret, Sium cicerum, was one of the most popular root vegetables in medieval and Renaissance Europe. It appears in Roman agricultural texts as a cultivated food plant. It features in the records of Charlemagne's royal gardens in the 9th century. Tudor and Stuart kitchen gardens grew it as a standard root vegetable alongside parsnips and carrots. The Emperor Tiberius reportedly liked it so much that he accepted it as tribute from Germanic tribes along the Rhine. The roots are sweet, starchy, and slightly spicy, with a flavor often described as a combination of parsnip, carrot, and sweet potato. They grow in clusters around a central core, harvested in autumn and winter from the same permanent root that returns each year. It thrives in partial shade and moist soil, the conditions that defeat most conventional root vegetables. In a shady yard, it performs where parsnips and carrots simply cannot. It disappeared from cultivation because the potato arrived in the 16th century and the agricultural system abandoned every root vegetable it replaced. Think of it as the root vegetable that fed medieval Europe for 1,000 years and disappeared the moment something easier came along. The most flavorful things are rarely the ones that won the convenience competition. Number 3, wasabi, the most valuable shade crop on earth that grows in your garden for free. Most people have never tasted real wasabi. The green paste served in most sushi restaurants worldwide is horseradish dyed green. Real wasabi is something else entirely. Wasabia japonica grows naturally along the shaded, cool, moist stream banks of Japanese mountain forests. It has been cultivated in Japan for over 1,000 years, appearing in records from the Heian period as both a condiment and a medicinal plant. Traditional Japanese growers built elaborate shaded water channels, specifically to replicate the cool, low-light conditions that wasabi requires. The growing environment was the entire challenge. The plant itself is straightforward. In a shady yard with consistently moist soil, wasabi grows as a slow but permanent perennial. The rhizome, the part graded as a condiment, develops over 1 to 2 years. The leaves and stems are also edible, used in Japanese cuisine as a vegetable and pickling ingredient. Commercially, genuine wasabi sells for extraordinary prices because the growing conditions are so specific. In the right shady garden, those conditions already exist. It disappeared from Western home gardens because its reputation for difficulty preceded it. That reputation belongs to the commercial growing operation, not the home garden. Think of it as the most expensive condiment in the world growing quietly in your shadiest, dampest corner. The things we assume are beyond us are sometimes simply waiting for us to try. Number 2, ginger, the tropical root that thrives in shade and produces more than you can use. Most Western gardeners assume ginger requires a tropical greenhouse. They are wrong. Zingiber officinale has been cultivated across South and Southeast Asia for over 5,000 years. Ancient Ayurvedic texts document it as one of the most important medicinal food plants in existence. It traveled the ancient spice routes to Rome, to medieval Europe, to every civilization that could access it, not as a luxury, but as a medicine and a daily food that communities genuinely depended upon. It grows naturally in the dappled shade of tropical forest understories, beneath the canopy of larger plants, in warm, moist soil with filtered light. That growing environment is replicable in any warm, temperate garden with a shaded bed and consistent moisture. In cooler climates, it grows successfully in containers moved under cover during winter. Plant a fresh rhizome from a grocery store in a shaded bed in spring. By autumn, the root has multiplied several times over. Harvest what you need and replant the rest. It disappeared from home gardening guides because the spice trade made buying it cheaper than growing it. That calculation ignored the freshness, the flavor, and the satisfaction of the harvest entirely. Think of it as the most useful root in the history of human medicine, growing in your shadiest bed from a piece of grocery store ginger. The things we buy without thinking are often the things we could grow without much effort. Number 1. Coffee, the ancient shade crop that civilizations built themselves around. And here, saved for last, is the one that genuinely changes how you think about your shady yard forever. Coffee. Coffea arabica is not a sun crop. It never was. It originates from the shaded highland forests of Ethiopia, where it grew wild beneath the canopy of larger trees for thousands of years before any human cultivated it. Ethiopian folk tradition credits a goat herder named Kaldi with discovering the plant's energizing properties when his goats ate the berries and stayed awake through the night. Whether that story is precise history or legend, the botanical fact is clear. Coffee evolved in shade. It was domesticated in shade. Traditional coffee cultivation across Ethiopia, Yemen, and later across the entire coffee-growing world was conducted under shade trees deliberately. Modern commercial coffee production stripped away the shade trees to increase yield. What it lost in doing so was flavor complexity, biodiversity, and the sustainable growing model that had worked for centuries. Shade-grown coffee is now a premium product specifically because it produces a more complex, more flavorful bean than sun-grown varieties. Ancient growers knew this without any laboratory to confirm it. In a warm, temperate climate or a heated indoor space, coffee grows as a manageable evergreen shrub. It produces glossy, dark leaves, fragrant white flowers, and eventually the red berries that contain the beans. It requires filtered light, consistent moisture, and warmth. A shaded warm corner of the garden or a bright indoor space replicates its native conditions almost exactly. It disappeared from home, growing guides because the commercial coffee industry created a global supply chain so efficient that growing your own seemed unnecessary. That supply chain also removed most people from any understanding of what the plant actually is, where it actually comes from, and what it actually needs to grow. Think of it as the crop that wakes the world up every morning, grown in the shade of Ethiopian forests for thousands of years, waiting for your shady warm corner to give it a home. Ancient civilizations did not build themselves around coffee because it was convenient. They built themselves around it because it was extraordinary. Your shady yard might just be the right place to find out why. 20 crops, every one of them built for the shady yard most gardeners gave up on. The gardening industry was never designed for your actual yard. It was designed for ideal conditions that most real gardens never have. The growers who figured this out, the monastery gardeners, the forest farmers, the indigenous communities who fed entire families from shaded woodland floors, they did not wait for better conditions. They planted into the conditions they had and ate well because of it. Your shady yard is not a problem waiting to be solved. It is a growing environment waiting to be understood. Which crop on this list are you planting first? Drop it in the comments. And if this changed how you see your garden, subscribe. There is so much more coming. The best gardens are rarely the ones with the most sunlight. They are the ones tended by the most curious hands.